start with this image because I think it's a problem a lot of homeowners eventually face. You have a spa in the backyard. Maybe it was a symbol of relaxation, a cool home improvement project. But years go by, the pump gives out, the heater dies, and all of a sudden that luxury item is just a giant, heavy eyesore.
It stops being an amenity and, you're right, it becomes a liability, a very specialized one. It's an object that was installed, often during construction, with the idea that it would never move again.
Exactly. And now you have to move it. And that's the moment the real headache begins. Because how on earth do you physically move something that weighs, what, hundreds of pounds?
Sometimes over 1,000.
And is probably half sunk into your deck.
It's the ultimate specialized burden. You're dealing with electrical, maybe some light demolition, and then heavy-duty logistics. It's not one job. It's three.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into that surprisingly complex world of hot tub removal. We're looking at a service guide from a top-rated provider in Portland, Oregon. Portland Movers Ready. But we're not just, reading a brochure.
No, our mission here is to pull out the universal principles. By digging into this super niche service, we can really understand how experts monetize the reduction of risk. What's the real difference between a pro who guarantees a clean job and a homeowner who ends up with a broken fence and a trip to the ER?
Because that's what it boils down to, right? The classic DIY versus hire a pro calculation. And this guide makes it pretty clear that for something like this, that DIY debate should be over almost before it starts.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why is hot tub removal so explicitly not a DIY task? I mean, theoretically, couldn't you just get a few strong friends, rent a truck, and, go to town on it with a saw?
You could, and that's precisely where the liability kicks in. The guide points to injury or property damage as the decider. But the hidden complexity, the first one, isn't even the weight, it's the wiring.
Oh, right. High voltage. High voltage. Almost all of these run on dedicated 220-volt circuits. So step one, before anything moves, is making sure that line is safely and correctly disconnected by someone who knows what they're doing. You start dragging a unit that's still live, you've moved from a heavy lift to a potentially lethal hazard.
So liability number one is electrical. Then it immediately becomes structural, doesn't it? Especially in older homes.
Precisely. The guide calls them awkwardly shaped, which is an understatement. They're impossible to get a good grip on. And like you said, they're often sunken into decks, which might mean you have to partially demolish the deck just to get the thing out.
And you have to know where to cut, I imagine, without compromising the rest of the structure.
Yeah, you can't just take a Sawzall to it.
What about that impulse, though? Just cutting it into smaller pieces. That seems like the logical way to handle the size.
That is probably the single most dangerous mistake you could make. And it's a great point. Hot tubs are fiberglass and acrylic.
Yeah.
When you cut that stuff, it creates this fine, sharp dust. It's a severe inhalation hazard. Plus, the structure gets really unstable once you start cutting. The risk of it collapsing or getting a nasty laceration goes way, way up.
And then there's the local context the source keeps mentioning. This isn't just a simple move across a flat, open yard. It's very specific about navigating tight P&W backyards.
That Pacific Northwest geography is a huge part of the challenge. You've got narrow access points, steep slopes sometimes, and, lots of rain, which means soft ground. The typical yard in, say, Multnomah County has its own set of barriers, fences, mature landscaping you don't want to destroy.
So you need a team that understands not just the object, but the terrain, how to get it across wet grass without leaving a giant trench behind.
Exactly. And that's why they talk about specialized tools and muscle. It's about protecting the homeowner's other assets, the lawn, the patio, the fence. When you hire a pro, you're not just buying their labor, you're buying their insurance policy.
That's the key. You're buying liability coverage. And this is where it gets really interesting because the guide pivots from the problem, all this risk, to the specific solutions they use.
Yes. They mentioned using specialized dollies and manpower. And this isn't the kind of dolly you rent for moving boxes.
Okay, so what's so special about these dollies?
They're usually very low profile, articulated, and designed for asymmetrical loads. But the key feature is often the tires-wide pneumatic tires. They're designed to spread that 1,000-pound weight over soft, wet ground.
So they don't dig in and destroy the lawn.
Right. It prevents them from cracking patio stones or leaving deep ruts. It's how expertise and the right equipment replace brute force. It turns a chaotic, high-risk job into a streamlined, predictable process.
So they're not just junk haulers. They're logistical specialists for heavy, awkward things.
100%.
And that efficiency isn't just about safety. They push speed as a major competitive advantage. They offer same-day or next-day service. That seems incredibly fast for this kind of work.
It's a huge differentiator, and it speaks to their operational maturity. They contrast that with waiting weeks for junk haulers.
Why would a generic junk hauler take weeks? Is it just scheduling?
It's a mix of things. General haulers might wait for a full truckload, but also hot tubs are bulk inert waste. In Multnomah County, that means specific tipping fees and scheduled disposal slots. A generic company has to wait for an open slot. A specialized service like this likely has dedicated disposal pipelines already set up.
Ah, so that same day, Offer signals they had their whole supply chain, or rather their disposal chain, completely sorted out.
It shows they're ready to deploy. They have the fleet, the crew, and the relationships with the disposal centers. That's what makes the service top-rated.
Yeah.
They eliminate that waiting period, which for a homeowner is a huge part of the value. You get your yard back now.
Right, that certainty is a big deal. But of course, the question everyone asks is about the cost. How much does this kind of specialized insured fast service actually cost? The guide seems to tackle transparency head on.
And that transparency is all about managing expectations.
Yeah.
They talk about clear upfront quotes and avoiding hidden charges or extra fees for difficult access.
Wait, hold on. We just established that difficult access is basically the norm in these tight P&W yards. So how can they promise not to charge extra for it? Are they just eating that cost?
They're not eating it. They're just much, much better at estimating it upfront. The price has to include their high liability insurance, the labor, the vehicle costs, and those significant disposal fees for the fiberglass shell.
So the variables they're pricing are really precise.
Absolutely. The rate depends on the complexity. Is it a standard spa on a concrete slab or a large sunken unit surrounded by a deck? Those are two different jobs.
Which brings us to their quoting process. They make it sound so simple. Call, text them at 503-953-6537, or just send a photo. That photo step seems crucial.
It is. It's not just for convenience. It's a remote logistical assessment tool. With one photo, they can see the slope of the yard, the width of the gate, any overhangs. They can see the variables that determine the labor hours.
So by sending a photo, the customer is basically helping them build a more accurate fixed quote. You're removing the guesswork for both sides.
Exactly. They can accurately determine the time, the equipment needed, like whether the dollies are enough or if they need to think about something more serious, and the crew size. It's a really smart screening process that builds trust and lets them stand by that no hidden fees promise.
I just find that fascinating. It takes this huge, messy, physical problem and turns the first step into a simple digital transaction.
And what's really happening is risk transference. The homeowner sees a simple four-step plan while the company absorbs all the complexity, the liability, the physical work, the disposal logistics.
Let's just walk through those 4 steps again, because they really do wrap up the whole value proposition.
Sure. Step 1 is just reaching out. You call, you text, or you go to their site, portlandmoversready.com. Book NAC now. They make it easy.
Step 2, you send that photo. You get your quick, free, and more importantly, accurate quote. That's your price guarantee.
Step 3, you schedule it. And you're banking on that same day or next day's service so you can get your space back immediately.
And step 4 is the payoff. The team shows up and you just watch. They handle the lifting, the navigating, all of it.
And that structured approach is how a service builds a top-rated reputation. It hits all the things a customer actually cares about: safety, responsible disposal, and getting it done fast and clean.
We shouldn't gloss over that responsible disposal part either. That's a huge burden lifted. You, the homeowner, don't have to figure out how to get a giant fiberglass shell to the right facility and pay the fees.
It covers all the bases: logistical, legal, and environmental. They manage the entire end of life for that product according to local regulations.
So what's the big picture here? We started with just a guide about removing a hot tub, and we ended with a really clear model for the value of specialized labor. They manage the risk, they have the right tools, those pneumatic dollies, and they guarantee speed and proper disposal.
Their goal, as they say, is to help you reclaim your backyard today.
Hmm.
And I think what we've learned is that the true cost of DIY isn't just your time. It's the hidden price of a potential electrical shock or fiberglass exposure or a $5,000 bill to fix your deck.
It's not about what you save on labor, it's about what you spend on certainty.
Exactly. And that's the final thought. When you're facing any complex problem, whether it's physical like this or maybe something intellectual like sorting through data, the highest value isn't just getting it done fast. It's the peace of mind that comes from the certainty and safety that only niche expertise can provide. And that's something to think about the next time you look at a tough job and say to yourself, how hard could it really be?